Hello and welcome to my quick demo of the IB MYP reports machine I have developed. This allows you to generate final report comments for end of year or end of term reports. These are written automatically for you based on student data. So I'll very quickly show you some of the features of this system, and in a later video I'll explain in more detail how it works and how you can edit things. So to start with, very quickly, I'm just going to show you an example student. I'm just making these up. So let's say the class is 8x2. I've got Sarah B. Need to enter a gender, which is F, female, and let's say she's got 3553. I'm going to leave the working at grade at the moment. I'll explain what that means in a minute. And I'm going to include the units and so on we've been working on. So this data can be copied in from any other source really, especially most systems that you might use for storing student results and data will probably export as an Excel sheet, so it's typically quite easy to copy them in. I'll show you a few examples here in a minute, but based on this data I've put into this side, I will generate a final comment. So let's just have a read and see if this makes sense. Before I start reading it, I'm just going to have a quick glance at these results. What I would say is probably that Sarah's doing fairly well. She's at the kind of average or maybe slightly above average level. She's put a good level of effort in. I've scored this effort myself for this term. We've also assessed the creative thinking ATL skill this term, and she's met expectations, and this is the unit we've been working on, the mini speaker project. So from this, all I've had to do is, as you've just seen, type in those things, and this is what the final comment reads like. So Sarah's worked well in design class this term and submitted her final project to a level 4 standard overall. Though she has put in a good level of effort into her work, her results have not always been consistent across all the criteria in the mini speaker project unit. Sarah did particularly well in criterion B, developing ideas, where she displayed promising design and communication skills. To improve her overall grade in future projects, Sarah should aim to improve her work for criterion A, inquiry and analysis, by analysing the design problem in more detail. Through the quality of work she has submitted, she has met expectations in terms of creative thinking ATL skill assessed. Sarah has found some success in design class this term, and I feel with a bit more effort and focus she will soon see higher grades in the future. I think you'll agree that's a very reasonable final reports comment to write about this student given this data. You may be wondering, well, she's actually got, two of these, B and C, are her highest grades, and A and D are her lowest ones. So maybe you disagree with this and say, actually, I think she did her best work in criterion C. Now you can adjust this over here. So I could put the strength would actually C, and maybe the target should be B. So as you can see, the report's changed. In fact, all of it's changed. I'll explain why in a minute. But you've got, if we look at where it mentions the strengths, Sarah did particularly well in criterion C, creating the solution where she worked safely and efficiently through the practical tasks to complete her product. To improve her final grade next time, Sarah should focus particularly on criterion D, evaluating by exploring more testing methods and communicating her conclusions in more detail. So you can adjust, even if you're not totally happy with what this suggests. For some students where you've got, the lowest grade is the same across more than one criteria, it won't know which one to pick necessarily, so you can adjust it there. Also by refreshing the sheet, so I'm pressing F9 on my Mac, but you could press, I think it's just F9 on the Windows system as well. You can see that there is a bunch of different options, and all of these, I'll just stop on a random one and read it out to you again. It should basically make the same sort of points as we have been reading before. In design class this term, Sarah has done well to complete her project work to an overall level 4 standard. Though she has put a good level of effort into her work, her results have not always been consistent across all criteria in the mini speaker project unit. Sarah did particularly well in criterion C, volleyball as well. We've seen those already. She has met expectations in terms of her creative thinking ATL skill assessed. Sarah has done well this term and seems to enjoy design class with a little bit more effort and focus. I feel Sarah could quickly achieve a higher grade. So you'll find that there's actually 25 different options per student, and what that changes is the first and last sentences mostly, depending on how you've set up the system to work. So I'll show you some other examples. Let's put some more students in. Let's assume they're all from the same class. We've been doing the same ATL skill and the same unit. So let's put Brian, who's a boy, and Frank H, who is also a boy. So let's say Brian didn't do so well this term. I feel like maybe probably approaching expectations for Brian. And let's say that Frank did really well. So 7, 6, 7, 8. So if we look at how these are different, well, let's read out Brian's first. So design class has been very challenging for Brian this term, and he has only submitted work to a level 2 grade standard. His lack of effort has had a negative effect on the consistency of his results in the mini speaker project unit. Brian showed some particularly good skills in criterion C, creating a solution where his practical work was very promising. Brian could improve his future projects by focusing on criterion A, inquiry and analysis, and researching the initial problem in more detail. I believe he is currently approaching expectations in terms of his creative thinking ATL skill. He could quickly turn this around with a bit more focus in class. Unfortunately, Brian has missed too many of the key topics in his written work this term to allow him to access the higher grades in design. On the contrary, given that this was written automatically, you can see the difference between a low student and a high student. So Frank has been an outstanding student in design class this term and has achieved the highest final grade. He's always put a high level of effort into his work, and his results have been mostly consistent in the mini speaker project unit. Frank has excelled in the final stage of his project, where he showed great testing and analysis in criterion D evaluating. Frank can maintain his high grades in future design projects by taking a bit more time to improve his drawing and communication skills in criterion B, developing ideas. He has exceeded expectations in terms of his creative thinking ATL skill this term by showing a great attitude towards the subject. It is clear Frank enjoys the design subject area, and I hope he will continue to build on his positive experience next term. So we've got sort of I'd say an average student, a low student, a high student. You can probably see the differences in the comments. How this works is it will look at certain things here. For example, it will spot if you've got a particularly low criteria, and that will suggest an automatic target. If you've got a particularly high criteria, it will praise the student for achieving that based on the criteria that's linked to. We also mention effort and so on. We can adjust the strength and target sentence here, and of course we can also edit the comments used. Now I'll make a separate video explaining this later. So you might think this is great, but we actually do end of year reports rather than end of term. Maybe your school only requires you to write out a return once a year, report once a year, in which case you can simply change the report period here from term to year. That way all of these will automatically change, and anytime you mention term, where it makes sense, will be swapped to the word year. So Sarah's achieved final level 4 grade in design class this year. Design class was very challenging for Brian this year. Frank has been an outstanding student in design class this year, and a few other instances where it will change those words. You could actually put anything, as long as it's a time period, like week. Sarah's worked mostly well in design cycle this week. Challenging this week. hard work has led to a design class this week, and so on. But most time it'll probably either be term or year that you would use. You might also be wondering, well, great, but I don't assess all the criteria grades in my termly report. For example, maybe it's the first term of the year and you've only done these two. So let's edit that. So you've only got these two grades so far, but you're still required to mention a final comment. So you're still required to write a final comment for your parent reports that go out at the end of that first term, for example. All of this will still work. The only problem is, of course, that these final grades won't make sense. I'll use Frank as the example here because though Frank has actually got 7 and a 6, his final IB grade is a 3, so that when the report is written it says Frank's found design class quite difficult, because it assumes that that is his actual working at grade. To stop that confusing this, I've actually included a new column here, working at grade, which like for Frank I would say he's working at a final level 6 at least, maybe even a level 7. So if I change that, you'll notice that this is copied into this box, which you can't edit. This is actually just usually used to adjust the your criteria grades into a final IB grade, but for now I've just allowed it to be changed manually. So this term Frank has achieved a high level 6 grade overall through the great quality of design work he has submitted. He has put in a high level of effort into his work and his results have been mostly consistent in the mini speaker project. Frank did especially well in criteria A, and so on. So it only looks at the ones he's done. Say we've, for some reason, done A and C. I'll just choose some random ones for these two. Oops. And I guess this student might be working towards a 4, this one might be on a 3, and Frank can stay on a 6. So you'll see that it still makes sense, and it will only pick the lowest and highest criteria it talks about from the two that you've actually done. So criteria A should be mentioned as the target here, yep. Criterion C should be mentioned as the strength. So same again, strength is C, A is the target, and this one should be backwards, so it should be criteria A is the strength, which it is, and criteria C as the target. Now of course you can edit these as well here as you wish. Once you've submitted all these, you can have up to 1,000 students in one sheet. Chances are you probably won't need that many, but I've just made it in case you do. You can quite simply copy and paste the comment into any other system. So this could be a Word document or iSAMS or SIMS or ManageBack or whatever system you use. It's just simple text. Okay, there's no formulas in there, it's just simple text that gets copied across. And that's all you need to know really. So this is how you use it. Type in the student details and a report gets generated. If you're not happy with the reports, for some reason you can press F and F9 to refresh them. So as you can see, they're all changing, and there's actually, for the amount of combinations that this can output, is something like 6.5 million, which I'm pretty sure is way higher than the amount of students studying the MYP in the world. So you'll end up with very unique reports, and reports that are always perfectly written. As long as the sentences used in the comment bank are perfectly written, you will get perfectly grammatically correct and correct spellings, and no confusion with he and she and accidentally putting the wrong student's name in the wrong report and so on. As long as you set all that up correctly the first time, you will never have to write a report again. If you stick around, you can watch the next video and I'll explain how you can edit the comments bank as well, so you can actually change what's in the comment bank. Thank you.